changing anything. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority September 11th, 2024 meeting. I'd like to call today's meeting to order. I am participating today from Livingston, Montana, not my usual location, but I'm traveling for another event and was able to thankfully take advantage of City Hall here in Livingston, Montana, our director Grant Gager's home turf. So before we get rolling, though, I would like to take just a moment of silence, recognizing that this is September 11th, and 23 years ago, we were in a very different place as a nation and as a world. So, Daryl, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. So with that, let's just take a moment and reflect on those lives lost 23 years ago, and those lives lost subsequent to that related to the event on September 11th, 2001. Thank you for that. Again, welcome everyone to the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority's bi-monthly board meeting. We meet every other month, and we welcome those of you for the first time, if you are visitors to this meeting. To those who are frequent attenders, we welcome you back, and we would also like to provide just a moment and recognize if there are any representatives from our congressional delegation in their offices or the governor's office. Now is an opportunity to formally recognize you. So do we have anyone from either Representative Rosendale or Zinke's office or Senator Tester or Dane's office joining us today?
My name's Steve Houck. I'm here with Congressman Zinke's office.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll try to keep our eyes peeled and recognize appropriately any additional representatives who join us throughout the meeting. So with that, Maggie, would you be so kind as to provide either any introductory remarks and direction for those attending today's meeting, or roll right into our business and organizational partnership recognition?
Chairman Spillmeyer. Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie Tupper. I'm the Office Services Manager for the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. I want to give a few quick reminders for today's meeting. If you have joined us before, you've heard these, but for our newcomers and as a refresher, we do ask that you keep your mics and videos off until you have been called upon to speak. Board members are certainly welcome to keep their video on, but we do ask that it is turned off during portions of the meetings. Our next reminder is during public comment portions of the meeting, you can make comments by raising your hand if you are joining us via video. If you are joining us via phone, if you hit *5 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And with the last reminder being, please keep the back and forth conversation in the chat box to a minimum. And at this time, I will ask everyone to turn off their video so that we can play our business and organization partnership recognition.
And Maggie, we do not have sound.
let me see here. They changed the settings. Let's get back to it here now.
It's time to provide daily passenger rail service to all of North America. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to resume daily passenger rail service from Chicago to Seattle through southern Montana with the return of the North Coast Hiawatha. The gift of your time, talent, and treasure to the efforts of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority can help this dream become a reality. We'd like to thank the founding members of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority's Business and Association Partnership Program. Your financial investment supports alliance building and advocacy and provides critical support for this transformative initiative. We need your help. Join us in our effort to resume daily passenger rail service to southern Montana and beyond. For more information on how your company or organization can become a partner of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, email us at hello@bigskyrail.org. Thank you for your support.
All aboard Montana, let's ride that line again. Watch our treasure beauty roll by like an old friend. All aboard Montana, like we all did way back when. All aboard Montana, time to ride that line again.
All right, thank you for that, Maggie. And again, a shout out to all of our organization and business partners and also governmental partners, be that county governments, be that municipalities, cities and towns, not only in the state of Montana, but also beyond. Maggie, would you be so kind as to call the roll?
Today in alphabetical order by county. So starting with Bighorn County, George Reelberg. Broadwater County, Daryl Folkward.
Here, thank you.
Butte Silver Bow County, Dan Olson.
Present.
Carbon County, Scott Miller.
Here.
Custer County, Kevin Kraus.
Here.
Dawson County, Jason Stewart.
Here.
Gallatin County, Scott McFarland. Jefferson County, Mary Hensley.
Present.
Lake County, Steve Stanley. Mineral County, Diane Magone.
Present.
Missoula County, Chairman Strohmeyer is present. Park County, Grant Gager.
Here.
Powell County, Terry Jennings.
Did you get Lake County? I'm present.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Steve. Powell County, Terry Jennings. Rosebud County, Sam Bile.
Present.
Sanders County, Rich Wallace.
Present.
Stillwater County, Tyrell Hamilton. Treasure County, Ruth Baker.
Here.
And Webo County, Edward Anderson. Right. Confederate Salish Kootenai Tribe, Martin Charlo. Amtrak, Chase Kitchen.
I'm here.
Thank you, Chase. BNSF Railway, Jim Tylick. Northern Cheyenne, Norma Gano. MDDOT, Rob Stapley. Crow Tribe, Luella Bryan. And AFL-CIO, John Denny.
Here.
Right. So it looks like we have 13.
Jim Tylett's on from BNFF.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Jim. 13 board members and 3 ex officio members present.
Thank you, Maggie. It looks like we have a hand up from a caller ending in 83, the number.
That would be
was me.
Steve.
Oh.
I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Steve. Thanks. And just a warm welcome to our newest board member representing organized labor. Great to have you with us, John Denny from representing EFL-CIO.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. Excellent. So our next item of business is inviting public comment on any items that are not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Rail Authority. If there's an item on the agenda that you're here to comment on, please hold your comments for that item. Otherwise, is there anything else anyone, be it a board member or anyone else, would like to comment on at this time? Okay. We do have minutes from July 10th, which is our last board meeting, July 10th, 2024 to approve. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Seeing none, they will stand approved as presented. And we are delighted to have a special presentation today. This is in recognition of the fact that we, as many of you know, are formally kicking off our corridor identification planning process. As many of you know, we were admitted into the Corridor Identification and Development Program by the Federal Railroad Administration. Our corridor, this is the former North Coast Hiawatha Corridor, which is now temporarily renamed until we go through a formal rebranding process, but it is currently known as the Big Sky North Coast Corridor, connecting Chicago to the Pacific Northwest. We went through a lengthy and rigorous procurement process to select a consulting team to help us throughout not only the first step, but subsequent steps of this program. The first step, as you'll probably learn here momentarily, involves scoping and developing a scope, schedule, and budget for developing a service development plan for this route. And so again, I'm delighted to introduce Abe Zumwalt, who is the project manager from David Evans and Associates, assigned to this project. And Abe, I will turn it over to you. And if you have any visuals you'd like to share, that would be fine. If not, that's fine too. So Abe, take it away.
Certainly. Thank you, David. And I see we're running almost a whole 10 minutes ahead of schedule, unlike almost any Amtrak train running at the moment. So we have a little more time for questions, potentially. I was expecting to come on in about 10 minutes. I'm Abe Zumwalt. I'm a planner and economist with David Evans and Associates. I'm talking to you from Tacoma, Washington today. I'm not in my usual office in Seattle, so you'll forgive the lighting. But you won't see me for very long, as I will share a presentation just now. Just to go over what the consultant team, the authority has chosen looks like, and also what we're going to be doing over the next few months in preparation for entry into step 2 of the CID program. So just give me a moment and I'll put this into presentation mode. So we are a larger team. I'm going to jump into that in 1 second. Just to say one more piece about myself. Personally, I'm really excited to be a part of the team that's going to be executing this work. This picture may look like a Microsoft background, but I assure you it's not. I took it myself from one of my 40 trips on the Empire Builder. This is just east of Glacier Park. So I have something of a personal affinity for the route on top of the professional acumen to see this through. But more about professional acumen. So who is this? We are a team that really covers the geographic entirety of the North Coast Hiawatha, or pardon me, Big Sky North Coast Corridor. Over in the west, as prime consultant, we have David Evans and Associates. We have deep passenger rail qualifications all throughout the Mountain West. In the heart of the route through Montana and North Dakota, we have KLJ Engineering, that are going to be helping us out a lot with on the ground stakeholder outreach. In the eastern part of the route, in blue, we have Quandel Consulting, and if you know much about rail in the Midwest, Quandel is synonymous with almost every new passenger rail corridor out there, so they really know what they're doing, and they'll be a great service to us in this effort. And then, if you can make it out throughout this map, the yellow dotted line, that's our fourth consultancy, which is Steer, and they've done ridership on almost every stick of rail hosting passenger rail service at the moment. So we have a very deep bench of qualified professionals running the team. And to kind of drill that home, this means that the authority, it isn't just going to fall upon me, although it's just me. And I did notice that my colleague, Randy Graubegger, is on today. Good to see you here, Randy. But for the most part, it's just me today because we're also going to get into some of the constraints that we'll experience in step one. But to guarantee availability of expertise, as well as making sure that we have the band of expertise, we have a pretty deep team that we're going to be calling on selectively to deal with each component of the work ahead. And just to run really quickly through, we'll just take a really quick trip through our qualifications. Out here in the West, David Evans and Associates has done major statewide planning procurement for every state every state west of Montana that the route's going to touch. I personally have done a lot of work on the Cascades, as well as some work for Sound Transit on the Sounder. In the middle of the route, we have excellent coverage through Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota for outreach efforts. And I think that this is really going to be the heart of where outreach is going to be most intensive, given the fact that presently on the selected corridor, this is not where passenger trains presently run. And then finally, in the east, we have Quandel's portfolio is quite impressive. As you can see here, they've done everything from the Borealis extension, which just came to fruition this year, the new Northern Lights Express running up to Duluth, and the long time work to increase frequencies on the Hiawatha corridor between Chicago and Milwaukee. They do a lot more than that, but this is just the North Coast Hiawatha, or rather Big Sky North Coast corridor that we're talking about. So what are we doing? And what's the scope of work over the next few months that we'll be helping the authority execute? Well, this is a slide I gleefully stole from our colleagues at the Federal Railroad Administration. And this really looks at kind of from stem to stern what the development of an individual passenger rail corridor looks like, at least in the new codified process that the FRA has developed with the corridor identification and then restoration and enhancement programs that were developed through the bipartisan infrastructure law. To be clear, right now, we are very much in the kind of somewhere between the purple and orange arrows there, just systems planning and moving into project planning in the early stages of what it would look like to implement this route. However, this is a pretty dry process graphic. It's good to note how this all happens, but there's a lot of diversity when we talk about the Corridor ID program, and I think it's important to kind of underline exactly where the Big Sky North Coast Corridor falls with its 68 peers, because that's right, there are 69 corridors across the country presently undergoing similar work, where they're all figuring out how to get their arms around what the corridors are going to look like and eventually plan out the specific infrastructure improvements necessary to achieve them. But the Big Sky North Coast Corridor is, I would say, and I don't use this word lightly, but a unique entity among these. Because when we look at all 69 corridors across the country, what we largely see are more traditional state-supported routes. And most of these are within the confines of one state or across one border or maybe two borders. There are two other long-distance routes presently in the Corridor Identification Program, but they have a significant advantage because in the east we have Amtrak's Cardinal, and in the southwest we have Amtrak's Sunset Limited. And you'll notice on the map that those lines are solid as opposed to dashed, and that means that those routes are presently operating, albeit they operate 3 times a week, and they're moving to 7 days a week, which I think is a great effort. And I really applaud Amtrak for having put forth those corridors into the program. But they're different from the Big Sky North Coast corridor because we don't presently have service in southern Montana. And this changes a lot of what the necessary work looks like to enable this to work. And let's get into exactly what that means. And so let's talk about what the steps of the Corridor ID program are, where we are in it, and how our effort is going to differ from, I believe at least it will differ significantly from the 68 other concurrent efforts that are happening across the country. So as Dave said, step one is the preparation of a scope, schedule, and budget for the completion of a service development plan in step two. That's just really to say that we're kind of writing the plan for the plan. But it's a lot to get our arms around because we need to figure out quite a bit in step one. If you look at what this massive slide is, and forgive me if your eyes are crossing on this, this is generally everything not in red constitutes a Federal Railroad Administration service development plan, because you need to think about all this stuff. Everything from project administration to transportation, environmental, and financial planning to alternatives analyses to stakeholder coordination. All of that has to be implemented. The scope means that we're going to take each one of these elements and we're going to essentially come up with a methodology statement for how this work will actually be executed in step two of the program. However, that's really what every other corridor is going to need to do. We have to do more than that. If you'll see, the red text here is a combination of extracurricular activities, both in part that the FRA has asked the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority to make sure that they include in their step one work, but it also includes some things that we believe should be included generally as a matter of best practice, given both the scope of this route, I mean, all 2,300 miles of it, and just all of the immense number of key interested parties we're going to interact with along the way. And so, like I said, everything not in red, these are things that that every corridor is coming up with a methodology statement for. And we're going to do that as well for the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. However, we're also going to be adding a few things. You know, instead of just a stakeholder engagement plan, we really need to have eventually agency workshops, because we're going to be dealing with between 7 and 8 departments of transportation potentially. We need a tribal engagement plan, because the BSPRA and its excellent work leading up to and continuing through this has identified around 40 tribes that may have an interest in this program. Throughout the entire process, we really want to make sure that we are coordinating heavily with the Federal Railroad Administration, but also from the very beginning, and again, a great big round of applause for the authority for having the forethought to already include its Class 1 hosts in the conversation and on its board. But you know, there needs to be coordination with both BNSF and CPKC from the beginning. Now, on top of all of this, and again, I apologize for the messiness of this slide, but the orange stars here all indicate steps that will actually start in step one. Most step one work that is being comprehended by other corridors, it just is simply just write the plan for it. Come up with how you intend to conduct the work that will comprise the service development plan. But for us, we actually have to start certain elements of this early. Most of this has to do with stakeholder engagement plans, tribal engagement, and coordination with the FRA and the Class 1 hosts. Because one of the deliverables coming out of this is going to be an Intergovernmental Communication Council, the ICC. And the structure of that is going to allow us to facilitate effective outreach across the entirety of this 2,300 mile route, just trying to get our arms around it again. So this is the bulk of what we are going to be spending our time on, and how we're trying to execute this first step of the process. Now, there are a couple of other things that we should go into. As I said, the Intergovernmental Consultation Council is a really important piece of this. And this is not just going to include certain members of the DOTs along the route, but also there are various entities that might take an interest in this route, such as boards of tourism, chambers of commerce, and other community groups along the route that we think should have a voice in steering it from the get-go. Then finally, there is one last thing we have been asked to do, which is, interestingly enough, a route rebranding process. I've been, I wouldn't say I've been struggling with it, but Big Sky North Coast Corridor is a mouthful. And the corridor needs a brand that it can that can inspire ownership from the communities around it throughout. These are all brands that our team has been in the process of creating. From the Amtrak Cascade service to Borealis, to the Hartford line in Connecticut, and the Northern Lights Express. We have people on our team that have helped shape the identity of modern passenger rail corridors, and we're really excited to start with the authority to come up with a new identity for this exciting and fantastic route. So I know that I've taken probably about 10, 12 minutes here. But I want to leave time for questions. And you know, I get tired of my own voice sometimes. So that's
Thanks, Abe, and welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us on this journey. So I will open it up to our board members. Board members, any comments or questions? Dan Olson.
Thanks, Abe, for that presentation. One of the things that I know we're bound by is the schedule and meeting the schedule that FRA has set out. How are we along that schedule, and when is the project going to complete step one? Thanks.
of course. Well, right now we're lucky to work with a pretty proactive team at the Federal Railroad Administration. I think that we could beat this, but right now what we are looking at is a likely completion date if we account for the necessary month-long review time that the FRA normally requires. So after each step of the process is complete, depending on how we package it, the FRA first needs a month to review the draft. And then, from my understanding, there's another month at the end before we finalize. So that really builds out the timeline. I think that there will be draft deliverables largely ready in the wintertime. So we'll be seeing the bulk of the statement of work and some of the important planning documents are going to be drafted most likely into February and January. But I believe that the finalization may be as late as April or May, depending on how fast the review periods go. We have enough time to get it all done. We have an extremely that estimation of April or May is extremely conservative, but it just is based on our best practice and also FRA telling us explicitly to please include a month for our own review time. So that adds bulk. The other challenge, of course, is the fact that a lot of this right in the middle of our schedule lies a pretty busy holiday season. And if we can help it, it's good to not have people in the office over New Year's Day, but you know, we do that if we have to. So, yeah.
Thanks very much. That's a good review. Thanks.
Of course.
Thanks for the question, Dan. Additional comments or questions from the board? Okay, I'll open it up to anyone participating today. Any comments? And please raise your hand in the using the raise hand function if you're joining via Microsoft Teams.
do have one in the chat box from Sarah Helkinson. I believe this is in regards to the branding process. She wanted to understand why you chose to promote Hafford, Cascade, Borealis, and the Northern Lights.
I see. That was more of a review of our team's resume. That wasn't necessarily saying that we would want to. I think that in fact, no, I don't think. I know for a fact that the Big Sky North Coast Corridor is going to very much need its own identity. It needs its own name. This is just to say that our team has participated in the naming processes of corridors that span the nation, and corridors that are very diverse in character, because the Cascades is so different from the Hartford line, and the Hartford line is so different from the Borealis and Northern Lights. So just kind of showing the capability and the different thought process in mind. So.
Yeah, let me just add ever so briefly onto what Abe, I think, put very well. As we were selecting a team to work with us, one of the considerations we were mulling over is who has a strong resume and track record in doing something just like what we want to do along this route, namely rebranding and coming up with a name for a route, either an existing route or a route that may have never existed before. And so what Abe displayed there was the depth of their team's experience doing just that. Because, again, as a reminder, the former North Coast Hiawatha, the North Coast Hiawatha moniker, during the time that it existed in the 1970s, was a cobbled together name. And in the year 2024, it makes little sense to have this route connecting Chicago to Seattle named after or include the name of a fictionalized New York State Indian chief. So it's time to blow the dust off of this and truly create a corridor branding that befits the majesty of this region through which this route passes.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question. Steve Held.
Hey, Dave Strohmeyer, how are you?
I'm great. Welcome from Southeast Montana.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, well, on the names, we named our this Highway 212 going through here Warrior Trail. You may not want to use that, but it's similar yet different. At any rate, it's pretty noble. My question was how, and it's a little off to the side. I think what you guys are doing is just terrific. It will be a huge boon, a big help to Montanans wanting to travel in and out of the state for whatever reasons. Do you know anything about the possibility of constructing hydrogen train engines in Livingston? Are you familiar with that conversation? And is that a possibility, or is it just ridiculous?
It is not ridiculous, Steve. Funny you should mention it. One of the things that we are intimately aware of and involved with is looking at the possibility of using hydrogen fuel cell technology as part of the train sets that will service this route once it is restored. And so that is something that is likely to be built into our service development planning process. We are in touch with folks who are representatives of the hydrogen hubs that span this region from Chicago to the Pacific Northwest, and that includes the Pacific Northwest, the Heartland, and the Midwest hydrogen hubs. We would love to and are certainly exploring the possibility of what would it take to have some sort of manufacturing, rail-related manufacturing footprint in the state of Montana. There's a few locations that could be prime candidates for that. Certainly, Livingston has a rich railroad heritage, as I experienced this morning driving into town here. The fingerprints of rail are all over this community. Too early to say how that will all pan out, but I think you're onto something, Steve, and it's something that we are currently working on.
And actually, just to add one really quick thing, I know that Southeast Montana to Southern California might be quite a ways, but you might want to go check out the new DMUs running out to Redlands, California, which are going to be one of the first stateside demonstrations of hydrogen power in action. So, no.
Yeah, both myself and Vice Chair Jason Stewart had the opportunity earlier in the year to travel to Pueblo, Colorado, and actually ride on one of the hydrogen trains that are being produced by Stadler that are being deployed as we speak. So it's not just pie in the sky technology, it's being deployed right now. We have a chance to really shape the future of what this might look like here in not only the state of Montana, but across this entire corridor. Thanks, Steve. Next, Paul
Dave.
Fassini. You bet, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I think the possibility of hydrogen-fueled locomotives is pretty exciting. And what would make it even more exciting is the source of the hydrogen. Do you know what the fuel base would be? Is it, by any chance, could it be Montana agricultural products?
What we are looking at, Paul, right now is what's called green hydrogen, and the model for that is going to be playing out likely in Mineral County here in the state of Montana as the first, I guess, test case of this using solar power to power an electrolysis facility that will create the hydrogen. So that is what's currently being considered, but very early on in the process. But thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Additional comments from anyone directed at Corridor ID or for Abe specifically?
I do.
Okay, Stephen.
Hey, I have one question. What is the idea for the daylight service on this line? Who will likely get that? Like the 7 a.m. Arrivals and departures. Do you have any idea at this point?
Yes, I can actually speak to that. So the first answer is no idea. But the second answer is the fact that there actually is a framework to make sure that there isn't the kind of winners and losers that you get with a one train a day schedule. One of the specific needs of this corridor as defined by the authority is to ensure that there are 2 frequencies per day. And so this means ideally that nobody's served in the middle of the night. So that's one of the major concepts. So there'd be 2 frequencies per day, which is something that really hasn't existed on most. I mean, if you go way back, if you go back to when the private railroads were operating services before they started to cut them back in the 1950s, a lot of long distance corridors had 2 or 3 trains a day. You know, you had your primary trains, like your Empire Builder, but then you had your secondaries, like a Western Star. Same thing with the North Coast Limited and then the Main Streeter, following each other. So I think that this is kind of a look at what that what that would allow us to do is to more holistically schedule the train to make sure that the route has access. Now, where the 7 a.m. is going to fall, we're too early for that, unfortunately. But overall, that overall concern has been addressed from kind of a global perspective when we think about how many ultimate frequencies to run.
Thank you. I noticed that on the Cheyenne or the Shoshone schedule from 46, it's on Wikipedia. They had a lot of good information, and looking at the way 2 trains ran back and forth, it just seemed like it's going to be an awesome thing for this new corridor. Best of luck. I'm glad to see the work starting. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for a great question. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. We probably have time for one more comment or question before we need to move on. Is there anyone else?
I have another
Okay.
comment in the chat
Go.
box. Is route rebranding, community outreach, and engagement, which could sound like a lot of PR and digital agency work, an acknowledged need and thus appropriate use of CID funds?
Yes, so there, it is actually, if you can go to the public contract between and it's right on the BSPRA's website, but you can read through the contract, the cooperation agreement between the Federal Railroad Administration and the authority, and you'll find that they explicitly request that outreach work be conducted in step one to construct the structure of the Intergovernmental Consultation Council. So that is absolutely an acknowledged and appropriate use of CID funds. And I believe that they have subsequently agreed that rebranding is another essential and acceptable use of funding, mainly because just to add on everything that Dave said about the need for a new name earlier, it's important that the communities that will interact with the route are able to all take ownership of this route. The formerly known name that was being used up until now, the cobbled together North Coast Hiawatha, is one that would make that more difficult. And so there, just in short, there has to be some process that allows that allows the route to be developed in a way that that allows it to be a conversation that grows the audience as opposed to one that potentially turns people away.
Yeah, this has been the subject of lengthy conversations with the Federal Railroad Administration, and they are totally on board with seeing this as a necessary condition to moving forward with corridor ID. All right. Well, we're going to have to move on, but thanks so much, Abe, for the introduction of your team, and we look forward to working together in the months and years to come.
Great. Thank you, Dave.
All right. So quickly moving on, as far as chairman and executive director's report, the only things I will just quickly highlight. First off, a shout out to our good friend down in the Boise area, former city council president of Boise, Elaine Clegg. She was part of the Senate hearing this morning, committee hearing on confirmation hearing for Amtrak board members, and with any luck, she will be a representative from this Intermountain Rocky Mountain region on the Amtrak Board of Representatives or Amtrak Board of Directors, representing a region that has had in the past little, if any, representation on the Amtrak board. There's a lot going on, some of which you just heard from Abe. The Corridor ID is the big show in town. We are also, though, engaging in the process of doing a small parcel delivery analysis. This is in partnership with the Pacific Northwest Economic Region's Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. We will be kicking that off in the weeks and months to come. I should also just draw attention to folks that there will be the Greater Northwest Rail Summit happening in Spokane, Washington on October 8th and 9th. I saw Charlie Hamilton on here earlier. Charlie, if you're out there and wanted to put into the chat the link to the registration page or information page for the summit, please do so. I believe that our very own Grant Gager and Mary Hensley, Mary will be attending the Montana League of Cities and Towns Conference in West Yellowstone in just a few short weeks, and they will be representing us at that event. Jess Peterson, our executive director. Jess, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
All righty. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
We are just navigating the roads here.
No, here we are. Hey, can you hear us all right, Dave?
We can hear you. Please do not drive off the road for the sake of an executive director's report.
No, we're not even. No, I got my headset on. No, we just got off the phone with Senator Bachner working on that train station or the depot, excuse me, not train station, depot in Miles City, per the executive committee's direction, per the leadership's direction. So just again, doing what we're doing, trying to make sure all the opportunities along our fine towns and cities and counties have some opportunities on these depots as we bring back passenger rail. And so we've had a good few weeks here. As you've already heard, exciting stuff happening on Quarter ID. Great overview. Thank you so much, Abe. And of course, we'll hear a little bit more about that and some great work on the committee structure. So not a lot to add. All of our work from headquarters is going to be covered. Well, obviously you heard about it in Quarter ID and for consulting updates, but then we'll also walk through our committees. So nothing to add here other than we're going to have representation at Mako and yeah. So we've got what's another one? No, that's us, Mako. Okay, that's yeah. So Mako is just around the corner here next week, right? Next week. So we look forward to seeing our members, our board members in Mako. And again, once again, if there's any, just I'd be remiss to say there continues to be kind of that confusion out there, being able to support 2 passenger rail lines in Montana. And the answer is always yes. Several of my good friends in the counties oftentimes get confused there, but we'll state that in the hallways at Mako, and any one of you that can assist with that, just know that yes, we can get those lines. We've got $11 million going into 12. What time? 14. I always think it's lower. 14 million just seems like way too much money. Yeah. Anyways, well over 10 million going into Empire Builder there on the Malta track improvements. So we've already brought that in through BSPRA. You've heard updates of the work we're doing right now. So again, I think for everyone as we go into certainly in Montana right now, our meetings, League of Cities and Towns is coming up here in October. The opportunity to talk about the success of BSPRA at multiple levels. Again, that Empire Builder line funds coming in there, the only long distance rail funding coming in here in the state of Montana, nationwide. It's only site selected. It's coming in here in the state of Montana. And so incredible opportunity. So please, as you get to these meetings, leagues or City of Towns, Mako next week, Montana economic developers, let everyone know the successes are happening. It's real, and you're going to hear some more on these committee updates. So hat tip to our board members and our very involved committee members. Most grateful and exciting work here on Quarter ID. So that's where we're at, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it back to you and the rest of the group.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jess. And it was actually 15 million. We teamed up with Amtrak on a federal state partnership grant to do some rail enhancement work up near Malta, Montana, to unblock and unclog what is otherwise a bottleneck for both freight and passenger operations up there. And we're happy to team with Amtrak and BNSF on this critical project. So we are extending the utility and the value of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority throughout the state of Montana. So moving on, we have a number of committee reports, and our committee chairs will be providing brief updates of what their committees have been up to, and then we will roll into the big show in town. Not that Abe's presentation was not the big show in town. It certainly was, but we need to adopt a budget today also, among other things. So with that, I am not going to say much more from an executive committee standpoint, other than we've been working on the budget, Quarter ID, rules of procedure, all of the things that you've either heard about or will hear about later on. So moving on, Grant Gager, chair of our governance committee, would you be so kind as to provide an update?
I'd be happy to, and I will keep it similarly brief as well. The governance committee continues work apace to do the things necessary to be a recipient of federal funding, including reviewing the procurement policy for inclusion of DBE language, working on a privacy policy, and later on, you folks will see the rules of procedure as well. Additionally, we continue work on cybersecurity and IT posture there. So we do have a meeting this Friday the 13th, and invite anybody who might be interested in those fun topics to join. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Grant. Super foundational, important work for the Rail Authority. So we appreciate that. Dan Bucks, would you mind providing an update on development and strategic engagement?
Good morning, members of the board and Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'll be brief here. I want to report that we've begun the year with a higher level of business and organization partnerships than in prior years. To some degree, the program builds on itself, but not exactly, because it takes effort in terms of soliciting business and organization partnerships. And in that regard, I want to thank our chair, Dave Strohmeyer, for his great work in working with me and both of us recruiting a number of partnerships, new partnerships this year. We welcome help on that. It's not hard to do, and it's important work, and we want to keep the momentum up. So please talk with me if you're interested in helping with recruiting business and organization partnerships. And again, thanks, Dave, for your excellent work and leadership on that front. We are working on a contract for fundraising consulting services for the authority, largely for expanding our major giving from foundations and from high worth individuals and corporate sources beyond Montana, and also to provide some support for our committee in terms of fundraising within Montana, but largely major giving. And we are working on that contract, and the executive committee, we will be working with the executive committee in terms of moving forward with that. We have this year expanded our governmental partnership program in two directions, both geographically. We've recruited 2 cities in North Dakota and are reaching out further in North Dakota and northern Idaho. And we have expanded the program in terms of the services provided, in terms of helping to support the member communities in Montana and outside of Montana with support in community planning for train stations, for connecting services, for transit-oriented development, to help maximize the benefits of rail for these communities. And we will be providing our first webinar, we hope, in October for these communities that are members of the program. And I also need to catch up. Just a quick note here with Mayor Mary in terms of making sure we have some way of recognizing our Montana cities and towns who are partners, who are government partners, and thanking them and providing information for other communities that may want to join at the League of Cities and Towns meeting in West Yellowstone. We are also working on trying to, in general, upgrade our sponsorship recognition and appreciation for all of those private and public sector entities that support us. And finally, we are working on starting to want to work on the subject of how we coordinate our volunteer activities in engagement, particularly with governmental partners, and with the renaming process, which were activities that have been occurring through our volunteer committee. We need to figure out how we coordinate that with our consultant on the corridor ID process. We are very excited as a committee about the renaming process. I noted a number of folks commenting on that during the course of this meeting. We view the renaming process as an opportunity to create much broader public awareness across the 7 or 8 states that this route will serve, and creating as well increased financial support for this effort through greater public awareness. So those are some of the topics that we are working on, and would be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and I skipped over offering the opportunity for questions for Grant also. So any questions related to either governance or development and strategic engagement? And I will take the opportunity to give a shout out to some of our newest business and government partners. So on the business front, DJ&A Engineering just joined us here recently as a business partner out of Missoula, Montana, and the communities, the towns of both Lima in Beaverhead County and Drummond in Granite County are our most recent communities, government entities that have re-upped their partnerships with the authority.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Moving on to another Dan, Dan Olson. I know we've been in a little bit of a holding pattern with your committee as of right now, but is there anything that you'd like to add?
That's basically what I was going to say, Dave, is we haven't met since the last meeting. I'm going to restart here, and what we really need to do is redefine our committee mission and vision and how we fit into the organization. And I believe that a lot of that will be in association with the support and development and strategic engagement committee and their presentations and documents for their upcoming webinar. So that's all I have to report at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Any questions?
Any questions for Dan? Okay, let's move on to finance. And this is less of a committee anymore, and more so the update from the treasurer of the rail authority, since we'll be contemplating very shortly merging finance and executive committee functions as part of our rule update. Rich.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The finance reports were provided as a link in the agenda, so I'd have you refer to them. They're on the screen now. I'm just going to try to pick up some time and ask if we have any questions. For the first 2 months of this fiscal year, which began July 1st, we were able to raise revenues of $11,012.21, and we incurred $39,252.78 of expenses. Typically in the July-August timeframe, we're out of balance, but that will start readjusting here in the coming months. Voluntary contributions, for example, will begin coming in earnest and hit the revenue line. We had one county contribution come in, Dawson County, in August. We've had 2 so far in September, and I know that there are a lot of others coming in. Sanders County's check will go out on Friday, for example. For this period, 70% of our revenue for these 2 months was primarily in the business association and partnership expenses, or to me, revenue. On the expense side, our largest expenses, as we usually have, are contracted services for Western Sky Strategies. That's a monthly reoccurring expense, but we also had a good amount of expenses come in that are non-reoccurring on a monthly basis, but more on an annual basis for the annual conference that we had in June. Lastly, the third largest is the corridor ID travel that we incurred with some of our folks going to Washington, D.C. for that meeting, and that is covered under the grant that we discussed earlier in the meeting. So that, to keep it brief, is my report for today on this matter. Any questions?
Rich. Any questions for Rich on our current finances? Okay, we will segue on into another financial matter, and this is something that we do every September, and that is contemplate the adoption of our fiscal year, our next fiscal year's budget, which we are already into since our fiscal year begins July 1. So with that, Rich, provide us an update on where we stand right now. We did roll out the preliminary budget back in July, and what we have here today is the final budget for consideration. Rich.
Great. Thank you again, Chairman Strohmeyer. So the final year 2025 budget was provided to you in a link, and it's up here on the screen. This is based on input from many different individuals, directors, committee chairs, etc. And we've reviewed most of what is presented here in the past. This is the title page with the BSPRA resolution number of 2024-04. That really should be 2025-04, shouldn't it? So we'll have to make that one change. But I would have you turn to page 6, if you could, real quick in the deck, and we'll just go through revenue. And this is our revenue page for this fiscal year. We'll have $887,855 in revenue, which is $725,210.85 more than our 2025 revenue, and that's primarily driven by the FRA Corridor ID grant and the Penwar grant, which are listed here. We did realize an increase in pledges from member counties for this fiscal year of $44,690 for this fiscal year. So that's a positive, definitely, for us. So we've got that accounted for at this point. If we go to page 7, these are the expenses we project for fiscal year 2025. We have streamlined the format from past budgets, and it also has a section for corridor ID expenses. So our budget expenses for the period are $842,450 compared to the previous year, which was $151,663.17, or an increase of $690,786.83. And again, the primary expenses that we figure are going to be incurred are related to FRA Corridor ID grant and the Penwar grant. So our cash flow remains positive and is projected to, to end the year at $159,033.06 for that period. We jump to page 9, Maggie. Page 9 provides where we're at as far as the voluntary contributions by county. One more page. Or I guess it's page 8, not page 9. I apologize. So here we are as far as the pledges go. And again, we've already received monies from Dawson, from Bighorn, and from Powell counties. And we expect more coming in here in the next few weeks as counties have their budgets adopted, and we're in the process of having invoices returned. So that's all I have on the budget, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Rich, and thank you for your many months of hard work on this. This is a heavy lift and central feature of both the work of the treasurer and also of the Rail Authority Board of Directors. Any questions from the board? And this is a public hearing, so I would invite any public comment or comment from the Board of Directors on the proposed FY25 budget. Any public comment? Okay, we will close the public hearing. I would entertain a motion from the board. There we go. Mary Hensley.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. Sam, were you just, did you want to offer comment or were you just offering to second?
I was just going to second.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the motion to approve the FY25 budget. Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, let's go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the FY25 budget is approved. Take a breather, Rich. We can start tomorrow on the FY26 budget. So,
Thank you.
all right, that's an important piece of business. So thank you all for that. Under new business, we have a couple relatively important items. The first is something that we've been, I think Rich actually mentioned this. This should actually be under like very old business since we've been working on it for so long, but this is the first time it's coming before this body, and that is to amend our rules of procedure. This has been in the works for probably at least a year, and many twists and turns and other things that have bumped it in the priority list. But here we are, and who's going to be presenting this? Grant or Rich?
Grant, if you want, I'll go ahead and do it. And then I'm going to
Hey,
disappear for
Rich,
the
I'll
rest of
let
the
you
meeting.
run this one across the finish line.
And Maggie, if you could do so, be so kind as to maybe enlarge this. My eyes are not bad, but they're certainly not good enough to see that. Okay, that's better. Go ahead, Rich.
All right, great. So both the red line work and the final rules of procedure policy were provided in the link agenda, and hopefully everybody has had a chance to take a look at that. Grant and I have been talking about this. The rules and procedure policy is basically the bylaws of the rail authority. And I'm still a member of the governance committee. We've been working feverishly, like Chairman Strohmeyer had said, over the past many months, and presented various versions of this document to the board in the past, as well as other committees. You also have the final version on all the work that has been conducted in a separate link. And so hopefully you've had a chance to compare and contrast. And so our efforts have been focused to more clearly define the roles of the board members of the various committees and our meeting cadence. And this has all been run through Dan Clark at the MSU local government folks over there, and also with legal counsel to make sure we're compliant with it, with the FRA. But you can, or excuse me, the MCA, not the FRA. But you can see that there was a lot of striking and there was a lot of editing that went on from past policies that we've had, and there was a lot of feedback and lots of editing that went on with this document. So without going into any more detail, because we've gone through this a number of times, we're presenting this rules of procedure policy update to the board for their consideration and approval, and open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Rich. And as a reminder to folks, we worked on the initial iteration of this way back in 2020, fall of 2020, winter of 2021, as the rail authority was coming into existence. It was a solid draft, but we've learned a lot over the past few years. So we continue our tradition of building the train to some extent while it is running down the tracks. So any questions on the rules of procedure update? Any questions or comments? Dan Olson.
Thanks, Chairman Dave and Rich. So this is a significant change from what we've been working on for quite a while. And I understand, I can fully understand that it's taken a lot of work. I hope that everyone has read it. I have, and I'm going to say that I have some concerns. So basically the concerns are the change in power and authority, lack of adherence to maybe focusing on mission and vision of the organization, and concerns about committees. So one of the things that I would like to see is increasing this, director engagement, where directors become more active in at least the power, delegating the power and authority of the organization, and become really active in it, and not just, I'm going to come to attend the meetings and vote yes or no on the decisions of the board. So anyway, for power and authority, the power and authority originates with the counties appointing their directors. So they are providing that authority for their director to act in the stead of the county in these decisions. And then once the directors meet, they take that power and delegate leadership by electing a slate of officers. I think that, and there's a lot of, and what I'm going to focus on too is we have power and authority. We also have duties, and those two things are different. I think that too many of the responsibilities and powers of the board of directors are being redelegated to a small group of individuals, that being the executive committee or officers, however you'd like to define that. I think that we may consider that we should assign the duties of the board to groups like the executive finance committee, but ultimately the power and responsibility should be retained by the board of directors itself. The board, the officers of the organization should have in the document a duties and expectations statement like they do for the individual directors, and define what those duties are, and that they serve at the pleasure and under the authority of the entire board. So I guess my concern is that the way it sits right now, the executive committee and officers have the full power of the board of directors, but that power really should be retained within the board of directors, and the duties should be delegated to the officers and executive finance committees. And like I said, we should have a duties and expectations of the elected board officers. One of the things that I'm going to talk about later is we should put in that, in the, maybe the oath of office and in the expectations here that the board and its directors should always focus and adhere to following the mission and vision of Big Sky Passenger Rail in their decisions, duties, and fiduciary responsibilities. Okay.
So Dan,
yeah.
I think we're gonna have to make a decision because we've been working on this for the better part of a year, and I would not want us to be wordsmithing this on the fly.
Right.
The language that you just talked about as far as the powers related to the executive committee have not changed. We've had those for about 4 years now, and so that's not a change. I think what you're suggesting is that the original language should be different than what it is. So
Okay.
if you could succinctly just wrap up the additional
Okay.
thoughts you have, then I think the board
Okay.
needs to decide whether it wants to move forward with this today or not.
Okay. So the third point was committees. One of the things in there, it says all committees are advisory, and all committees are advisory in nature to the board. So as such, the executive and finance committee should not have the power and responsibility of the board. And I also believe that committee chairs should be directors and not a volunteer because they have no authority. The volunteers, and that there should be some membership and quorum and a process for becoming a member of committees. With that, I'll retire and let anyone else have some comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Additional comments, Rich.
Thank you. So Dan, I mean, I'd be more than happy again to go through and you can point some things out, but maybe I'm just picking on one thing, but this is what came up. I mean, I think you made the comment that only directors should be committee chairs. That would be great, and I want to encourage that. But I will tell you, I was committee chair of the governance committee because nobody else stepped up. And I was a citizen volunteer at that point. So I agree with you, but we need to make sure that we can include as many people as we possibly can who are willing to put forth the effort. And I'm not picking on anybody who didn't volunteer when I say that. I think that's we need to recognize the good and the not so good at times when it comes to this. So point well taken. But it hasn't always happened that way.
Dan Olson, and then Dan, before you jump in here again, I think our options are either to move forward with the draft as presented, which has gone through many iterations, propose specific amendments today, which have maybe not been vetted, or send it back to committee for additional conversation and discussion. Some of the points that you've mentioned, Dan, have been the points of significant discussion, and that does not mitigate or lessen maybe your desire to want those changed, but they are not the first time we've discussed these items. So Dan, and then Mary Hensley.
Thanks, Dave and Rich. I understand that. I think that the volunteers do a lot of the heavy lifting in this group. But that's why I would like to see more of the directors be encouraged to be more engaged in the process. So, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, that motion is in order. So the motion is to approve the rules of procedure, amended rules as presented. Is there a second for that motion? Jason
Hey,
Stewart.
Dave, this is Scott Miller. I'll second.
Oh, Scott, I'm sorry. Yeah, I missed you there. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I'll second that motion, Dave. And I got to get going. I've got another appointment, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. Jason, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to second, but Scott beat me to it, so we're good.
Okay. So we have a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion or public comment on the motion, recognizing we need to we need to have 12 affirmative votes to adopt the amended rule, since this does, by our own rules, require a 2/3 majority. Further discussion or comment on the motion? Okay. Maggie, do we still have in excess of 12 voting members present?
We do, yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead and try a voice vote and see if there are any dissenters, and we'll take it from there. All up. Let's see. Mary, is your hand still up from before?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, okay. All those in favor of adopting the amended rules of procedure as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay, Dan Olson.
Any abstentions? Okay, let the records show that we have one voting no and the balance voting yes. The rules are amended. Thank you, everyone, for that. Moving on, we have one other piece of new business, which is an unfortunate piece of new business. We received notice from Granite County per the resolution that's attached to your agenda that they would like to be removed from the boundaries of the rail authority. The reason stated is as stated in the resolution, that they have concerns about the economic viability. Can you enlarge that, Maggie, please? They have concerns over the economic feasibility of the project as they frame it. And by project, I think they're alluding to the Big Sky North Coast corridor, even though clearly we do work beyond that. We've had discussions with their commissioners and have emphasized that at a very de minimis level, all that they need to do to participate is appoint someone to our board of directors, which they have. But it is the prerogative of them to request removal, and they have no financial obligations to the rail authority or other obligations that would require them to remain. And so it's a bit of a rubber stamp vote today that we're offering, since we have no legitimate reasons to deny them from removal of the authority from the boundaries of the authority. But nonetheless, this is where we are today, and we've made clear to them that the red carpet will remain rolled out to them into the future. If they should at some point in time want to rejoin, it is a bit ironic in that, as I mentioned earlier, one of the newest government partners or re-upping government partners is Drummond within Granite County. So with that is where we stand. It looks like we have a hand up here, but before we, well, let's just take it in order. Kim and then Samantha.
Thanks, Dave. I think it's worth noting that in less than 24 hours, a quickly designed petition was provided to Elena Gagliano, and she secured over 22 signatures from local business and community members in support of the authority. And even though the primary argument initially was we don't want to spend any money, which was refuted by you and Dan Bucks very well, and Elena, then the second comment was where's the community support, which initially only had 3 or 4 people showing up to support. So I do think the community and the businesses are watching Drummond and considering engaging with the authority through a government partners program. So I just thought that was worth adding. Thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Sam?
Yes, I move to accept the withdrawal and remove Granite County from Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority.
Yeah, motion is in order. Is there a second? Is there a second? Rich Wallace.
I would second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion or public comment on the motion? Okay. Let us go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes, and Maggie, please transmit to Granite County our resolution once it is signed. That concludes everything remarkably within time. We have no correspondence other than the resolution that we received from Granite County a couple weeks back. Are there any general comments from board members? Is there?
Mr. Chairman, I just didn't get a chance to thank Rich in my comments, Jess Peterson. Just want to thank Rich and everybody on the budget committee. That was outstanding work, and we feel very confident about where we're at. And I know Rich has really thrown down on that. So on behalf of headquarters, we're grateful, and it's exciting for where we're headed. Again, we have an opportunity. Dan Buck's done an incredible job on fundraising. We have an opportunity to go to these meetings this fall, and those of you that wear multiple hats, got to make it all work with the contributions the counties give. So we're grateful, and just the opportunities abound. But we'd be nothing if we didn't have the great tireless work of Chairman Wallace on the budget. So thanks, and thanks everybody for the work today.
Thanks for that shout out, Jess. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't recognize Elena Gagliano, who has represented Granite County for the past number of years. And we thank her for her involvement and wish her the best. Any other comments from board members or staff? Any unscheduled matters to be brought before us? Okay, our next board meeting will be on November 13th. Let me or Jess or Allison know, or Maggie know, if there are any particular agenda items you'd like built into that. Otherwise, thank you for your participation and involvement with the Rail Authority. We're at a super exciting time, a lot going on, and we look forward to updating you in November. Have a great day, and we will be adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.